If you are getting a divorce or thinking about it, first of all, I want you to take a deep breath. I know how heavy this season is for you. I've been there too myself. And I want to give you some tips and things that I experienced and what I did throughout my divorce process, how it affected me, my children, and the relationship of my kid's father, how we co parent now, and most importantly, how I healed from the process and where I am at now with it. So, if you are feeling lost, this video is just for you. First off, I want you to understand that you are not alone, and I want to tell you things that no one told me during my divorce process. I didn't have many examples of marriage in my life growing up. So when I navigated this whole marriage thing and getting a divorce, I had to learn as I went. So these are some things that I want to let you know to help you in your process. What hit the hardest? For me personally, when it comes to this, I believe it goes based off of why you're getting a divorce. I had a situation where it was a third party involved. So there was a lot of pain there, there was a lot of betrayal there, a lot of confusion, and things switched for me really quickly. I went from being a stay-at-home mom and a wife, and that's what I wrapped my identity in, to one day my whole life was like pulled from up under me. So when it comes to what hit the hardest as far as that, like I said, I had another party involved. So if you are in a situation where maybe you two are growing apart, our situations of what might hit the hardest when it comes to getting a divorce could all be different. So it could be painful to know that you have grown apart from somebody. You could be relieved that you knew you grew apart and that was time and you're finally finna get a divorce. So when it comes to what hit the hardest, as far as that goes, it was someone else involved. So of course, I was extremely hurt. What I think probably, if I could put my finger on something what hit the hardest, it was that my life wasn't what it was the day before when I found out that my ex-husband was cheating on me. The emotional roller coaster. When I decided to file for divorce, I decided quickly. It was more of me using a wake-up call towards my then ex-husband. But I have to admit, when I look back on it, me filing for divorce was being very manipulative. Not that I should not have filed for divorce, but I was doing it in a way of, hey, if you don't do what I say and come back to your home with your kids, I'm filing for a divorce. It was a tactic for him to do what I wanted him to do. But at the end of the day, I should have been just willing to get a divorce because of the betrayal that he caused and the hurt he caused on me. But I was doing it in the way of trying to lure him in. So, the emotional roller coaster I experienced, one minute I wanted us to work it out. The next minute I wanted to have nothing to do with him, and just the constant toxic cycle that this situation had led us in. I felt an extreme amount of guilt because I felt like as a wife and as a mom, I could have been better towards him. I could have been more understanding towards him. I could have done things to keep him in this marriage. So I definitely went through a tremendous amount of guilt when it came to me getting a divorce. At one point, I remember calling my mom and said, this doesn't seem right. I do not feel like I should be getting a divorce right now. It just does not seem right to me. I don't want to go through with it. Although I continued to go through the process of having a divorce and we did separate, he moved out and he went to go live with the person that he decided to start a relationship with. So I pretty much had no choice but to continue to move on with the situation, because no matter how hurt I was and no matter how much I did not want to let go of what the reality I created, I was never the type of person that will be able to deal with allowing a man come back and forth between myself and another woman. Of course I felt that the tremendous amount of fear. I didn't know what life was going to look like for me. I'm gonna be very honest right now. It was a point where probably like the first 2 weeks of me finding out and going through this, like I just was like a zombie. And I remember my mom saying to me, like, I need you to kind of, she was like, I've been where you are. She wasn't married, but That's her story. She had a different experience, but she said, I don't like where you're at. You're not eating. You're just like out of it right now. And she spoke some words into me that made me snap out of I was like frozen for a good 2 to 3 weeks trying to wrap my head around it. And then I was in fear. And the number one thing I would say that I struggled with the most, to be honest with you, was control. I wanted to control the situation so bad that it was dang near killing me emotionally. I wasn't being a mom that I was usually am to my kids and stuff like that. So I really had to snap out of it. What surprised me the most as far as coming to reality of getting a divorce, I would have to say that my strength. It really, how I stood on what I felt and what I meant. I was not, it was a process, but I refused to let someone just feel like they can walk all over me. They could manipulate me. They could go back and forth between me and another person. I stood on that and I kept moving. I kept going, because if you're getting this far in a divorce process, it's a reason why. I stood up, even if I had times where I felt at my lowest. I've had very low times during this process. It was pretty traumatic for me. I'm not going to lie, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, because it's always the end of the rainbow, if that makes sense, within the story. The light at the end of the tunnel is what I'm trying to say. But, you know, I had so much strength to stand up against everything, to find who I was, to be the woman that I am, who I didn't stand for anything. I could have easily allowed that my ex to come between and go back and forth and allow that type of dynamic between my children to see that, but I refused. Once he was out, he was out. So during this time, my children, have 3 children. My children were 9, 3, and 1 when I was going through a divorce. I feel like my oldest, because she was the most aware, she took it the hardest. As far as that, I know she was very confused. It went from her having a 2-parent household, where she's known all her life, to now her dad is gone. And not only her dad was gone, her dad was living with a whole nother woman. And I was still allowing my ex to get the kids, even when he was with the other woman, because I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm one of them people like, okay, y'all want to be a family? You want to be a family? You finna get all it. Go be a family. You want us to be stepmama of the year? Go be stepmama of the year. I'm not going to keep my children away from their father because of this situation. He caused hurt to us, but he necessarily I wasn't afraid for my children to be around him, if that makes sense. So I still allowed my kids to have access to their father and to have access to them. So, but however, I feel like as far as my oldest, she was extremely confused. I feel like for a while she was more mad at me, but I understand, because I feel like in this dynamic, she trusts me the most. And she was able to show and express at a young age that she was hurt, even if it was in a ways that I feel like she was more angry towards me. But she was able to do that because I was her safe space. I was her safe space. So that's just, she didn't know how to get it out in a mature way, because she's 8 or 9 years old. But I never like shamed her for it. You know, it would be extremely frustrated. I would tell her, like, you have to speak up. You can't just be mad at me. You know, you have to also, in a way, I was able to translate it to an 8-year-old. You got to hold your dad accountable for certain things too. And it was nothing like be mad at your dad for being over there with this woman or tell him that stuff. No, I would never do that with my children. It was more so, you know, if your dad is late to pick you up, you know, you got to express that to him. Like, I don't like that you did that, Dad. I don't like that you're later. You didn't come today. You came the next day. Stuff like that, that I felt like I was the frustration was put more on me, even though he was the reason behind her frustration. But I understood it was because I was her safe space. And that's just the easiest way I can put that. I just supported my kids by being there. The way I was able to support my kids was when, you know how I told you in the beginning, I went through a little thing where I was like out of it. And when I got out of it, that was the best way for me to support my kids, was trying my hardest and getting up every day and being the mom that they knew. The mom that was still there, hands on. And things did look different now. I had to go back to work because I was a stay-at-home mom. So, you know, things did look a little different, but I was always there. I always was solid with my kids. Always. Mama solid. That's for sure. So I supported them by just being the mom that they were used to having. No matter if the dynamic has shifted emotionally, I'm your same. For them, I'm the same. You're going to get our dynamic might have changed, but this is not their fault. You're going to get mom, and you're going to get mom actually show up stronger for y'all. So that was the best way I supported my children during the time of the divorce. My biggest fear was, as far as it went for my kids, that he would become an absent father, that he would have just like left us for dead, but he didn't. I did not experience that. He was very much still getting his children and stuff. So, but that was my biggest fear, was if he would have just had me out here being a complete single mom. But that wasn't the case. And I hope that for any of you that is experiencing that now, it was hard because, you know, with all this drama, co-parenting is not going to be very easy. But I think we both have one thing in common. We both love our children. That's for sure. He was there, but it was still a lot of toxicness going on until we got to a better place. So I'm going to be very upfront and honest about that. It was a lot of toxic stuff going on that I don't have enough time in this video to even get into, and it's not what this video is about. But yeah, he was very much still there, and I will always respect him because, you know, he never walked out on his children. So yeah. So co-parenting after the divorce. This is what I'm going to tell you guys. This is the advice I am going to give when it comes to co-parenting after a divorce. You are going to have to really take a moment and ask yourself, what type of co-parenting relationship do you want to have with the other individual? What do you value the most in your life at the moment? For me, it was peace. Peace. That situation was so chaotic and so traumatic, guys, that one day I just I want peace. But here's the thing. I had to give it to myself. I cannot wait for the other party to meet me at peace. Because if that is not the perspective for that person, if that is not the way that person wants to live their life, then it won't be that. And I want to give y'all a gem that I think a lot of people sleep on. It's like, you can want peace, and yes, your other person can be chaotic. But if you continue to push that energy, they have no choice but to respect it. If you do not fall in or give into the tactics that they might try, and you keep your peace front and center, they have no choice but to fall in line. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. I will say hands down, if it wasn't for me really exuding that energy, really pushing peace, really pushing, I don't do certain things, when a boundary was crossed, third party's involved now, I don't want to talk to you. That doesn't mean it's traumatic, or toxic. We now got to go through my mom until you can understand where I'm at. I'm not going to keep meeting you where you're at. I'm somewhere else. They can be toxic with everybody else around you, but they're going to know because you're pushing that first not to do that with you. I will promise you that. So what do you want out of this co-parenting relationship? What is ideal for you guys? If you have to always have a third party involved, that's fine. If you don't want to talk to that person at all, that's okay. Especially if you had children older that can communicate with the other parent, you really don't got to communicate with them like that. Like, I'm going to be for real. But if they're younger, I get it. So do whatever you got to do to figure out what that looks like for you. And you exude that energy. And you're going to have times where you might slip up and have to check somebody or do what you got to do. But as long as you're aware and come back and you check yourself too, because you allowed that person to put you there, it will start to get better. It will be less of that. Because I'm telling you, they will fall in line. I promise you that. Me and my kid's father co-parent pretty well now. We still, obviously we're human. We get on each other's nerves from time to time. But as far as co-parenting, it's fine. We have a regular schedule. We communicate. We split everything when it comes to the kids. When it's something that we're doing, like joint, like graduations or sports, stuff like that. He used to be on child support. He's no longer on child support because I feel like he does what he needs to do for his kids. And I have no reason to really need him on child support. That's just for me. If you have someone, at the beginning I dealt with, he used money to kind of control the situation still because I was a stay-at-home mom. So he, provided. So if you're dealing with somebody like that and you don't have to ask them for anything, then definitely get on child support. That's one of the only reasons why I would promote doing the child support stuff, is because I don't want you to have someone to hang that over you. Just get your money straight to the account, however you guys do it, depending on where you're at. So, but he's no longer on child support, but we co-parent very well. Normal routine. If still to this moment, if he does something that I feel like this disrupting my peace, I will cut off all communication with him, and not to manipulate him, but to come back to self, to center myself. It's all about me. So that is how I keep the relationship afloat. If I do something incorrect, and if I make a mistake and I might jump the gun with him, I own it. And we move forward from there. So co-parenting is fine. It went from being a very traumatic situation to it's okay now. I'm not mad at it or anything like that. And that's when I want to get into how I healed and rebuilt my life. So much healing came out of this situation. I didn't realize how empty and ugly I was in the inside until I had to be by myself. And I would be forever grateful for that. I would be forever grateful that I was allowed that moment to be alone and have to deal with myself so I could become a better person. I got myself together. Spiritually was the number one thing. I found my spiritual routine. I found my spiritual foundation, and it saved me on so many levels. I have a video about that. If you guys want to check that out, how spirituality saved me, go ahead and check that video out. But the most important thing for me was my spirituality and understanding who I was as a woman. I was in my late 20s when I got a divorce, and I was becoming a woman. So I really got into entrepreneurship. I started when I was married. I started doing like party decorations on the side as a little hustle, but that became my actual brand at some point. I was able to open up an event space and really rebrand myself and who I was becoming. I connected with myself as a woman. I felt way more beautiful. I glowed up, y'all. Okay. I took my power back, how I felt about myself, my self-esteem, my, being sexy, my sexuality. I connected to all of that. And here's the thing, I don't want to say that my ex took all of that away from me. I allowed myself to not even ever connect with it or find it. I didn't even know what that looked like for me. But getting a divorce and having to be by myself and having to actually begin to love myself changed the game for me. it changed the game for me. And I will never regret having a divorce because of that. I would never, if I have myself, that's all I need. And in a way of, I just do not regret it because I gained something that no type of love from another individual could ever give me. And that was my love for myself, my wisdom, my knowledge, my courage, because I had to do it raw and alone. And that's another thing. I did not go find another man to fill that void. I went through myself raw. I allowed myself to hurt. I allowed myself to feel. I picked myself up. I leaned on my friends. I poured into my children. I dated, of course. I have not had a serious relationship since I've been divorced, but I allowed myself to be by myself. The universe, God gave me the opportunity to be alone and to know DeShayla. And I'm forever grateful for that. And it really, really helped me take on a lot of things that I never thought I would be able to take on. But yeah, I just want to let you guys know that wherever you are in this journey and in this process in your life, I just want you to know that you deserve peace. You deserve happiness. You are deserving of to rebuild your life and get to know yourself. And I do want you to know, most importantly, if you cannot see it now, it definitely does get better. I wouldn't change my experience for anything because it has really helped shape me to the person that I am today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want more videos from me, please please subscribe, drop a comment below. Let's create a supportive community for each other, for other people who might be going through divorces or who's thinking about it or who's scared, or advice you have, questions you might have. Drop them in the comment box below and I will answer you guys' questions as much as I can. So yeah, thank you for watching, guys. But yeah, I'll check you guys later. Bye.